I won't say entirely negative, but 95% of the impact that screens have been negative.
There are so many people that have an opinion on that situation that it's hard to know what is right and what is wrong.
When we were kids, we only had, 2 or 3 channels to watch.
We had one TV in our family room, and it had 3 or 4 channels, and that was it.
I didn't get cable until I was 13 though, so I only had 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. Those were my channels, that was it.
Growing up, I watched a lot of sports with my parents. We were not really allowed to otherwise watch shows until we were probably like in middle school.
We only had like ABC, CBS, and NBC, so we didn't have a big variety back then.
I could watch cartoons on Saturday morning. Occasionally I could watch afternoon programming, but usually in the evening my father would be there and he was going to watch Westerns.
I had a good split between watching shows like Nickelodeon, the Nickelodeon channel, watching cartoons, Looney Tunes, those sort of things.
What's up, Doc?
So we watched Gilligan's Island, Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes. Oh yeah, Pink Panther was a cartoon on Saturday morning.
So I would come home from school and I would watch reruns on TV in the afternoon. I would watch original Star Trek. I would watch Gilligan's Island. I would watch certain shows like that.
Sunday evening was also because the World of Disney came on and we're supposed to go to church, and so the temptation of, I have a stomach ache or something, so I could stay home and watch that, but that didn't work very often.
We would watch TV when we came home from school, and also on the weekends, because that's when the cartoons played.
You had, your morning time with Mr. Bill, and right before you got ready to go to school, you got to watch, limited cartoons like Tom and Jerry and the Roadrunner and things like that.
I don't truly remember what I was watching at 6 years old. Probably things like Arthur and Sesame Street and
Yeah.
the PBS-esque shows, Barney.
Yeah, I remember
like
watching that. I always wanted to be one of the kids on Barney.
Could dance and sing, and we could fly on magic wings, or maybe for a day I could be king.
And I do remember a period of time I'd come home, I'd want to watch my show, but the Watergate hearings was all that was on. I'd be very, very upset so I couldn't watch my reruns.
Cartoons were a lot different back then than they are what you can watch today. So.
I don't remember my parents having a strict 30 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours a day type of limitations on me when I was consuming media.
We would come home and you would put the TV on and you would have a snack and you would hang out and watch. And then by dinner time, it was time to do your homework and all of that stuff.
I don't remember any regulations.
I don't remember a lot of regulation. I mean, I had chores to do and I had to do them. After school, before they got home, the TV was usually on watching one of those reruns that I was talking about. After supper, you would watch the news.
We could sit as a family and watch stuff, but my siblings and I did not otherwise sit in front of the TV to watch what we wanted, probably until we were in middle school or high school.
As I got older, it was truly regulated by activities. I'd go to school, to baseball practice, to baseball game, to dinner, to, homework and bed, and so there really wasn't time for it. And when it came to personal devices, we were restricted at that point by data plans. Nobody was watching things on their phone because you only had 500 megabytes of data to use in a month.
If I was in my room for too long with the door closed, playing my games too much, I might just open the door and say, all right, go get outside, go play, get dirty or something like that. So it wasn't as formal as what I have to do with my son today, where I actually have to say, at 20 minutes, stop, go do something. I was playing a lot of like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and I think that was really helpful in a way because I was more engaged in the actual media itself. When you're watching TV, if it's not story driven, you're kind of just sitting there, and I call it like the zombification, where you're just staring at a screen, mouth agape, not really paying attention to what's happening. Where if it's story driven, you're at least immersed in what's happening, and if it's a video game, you're using your tactile and dexterity functions to actually engage with the material itself. So that's much better in terms of expanding attention span and those sorts of things.
I do think that there was some difference between cartoons when I was growing up and when my children were growing up. They were more educational when my children were growing up. They were more interactive, like you had Dora the Explorer, who tried to get children to respond.
The cones, right! The traffic cone!
It seems like a lot of the cartoon nature of it has gone away. You know, you look back at some of the programming and everybody was very fictionalized, and now they're really trying to make things relatable. The graphics are less cartoonish, and so I feel like there's more of a connection to it, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
As my kids were growing up, they were watching some animated stuff that I was very different than the animated stuff I watched when I was younger. The art styles, the way that it was drawn, the behaviors. You know, there was a point in time with the Disney shows that the parents sort of disappear in those shows, or if they're mentioned at all, they're ridiculed. And I was just like, why are they doing that? What is that? And very often they like to show on some of these shows the kids as being just mini adults, and I don't think that's a good idea.
I think streaming has changed like the timing of when you can watch things.
Now with cable and most streaming services, there are so many things out there now that you can let your kids watch if you're not paying attention to them that they're not kid appropriate at all.
Because like in cable or regular TV, you had a certain time which you had to watch it, or you missed it, or you had to record it. But streaming, it seems like you can watch it anytime.
Dad, you, Mama. Now what?
The overuse of technology is having a negative impact on their behaviors. If you go to the park, that's supposed to be a place where they're out doing physical activities. But nowadays you see not only parents, but kids bringing their parents' phone or iPad while at the park.
It's just so easy to hand a child a screen when you want them to be quiet or be entertained.
There is a sense of entitlement that when you reward behavior for screaming, rewarding that behavior by giving them an iPad to play with, you're basically saying that's okay.
I see out in public all the time now. You go out to a restaurant and you sit down and you look at the nice little family across the way, and they're handing iPads or cell phones to their very small children just to keep them quiet and to keep them entertained while they eat out.
But United States is 19th in screen time, about 7 hours per day. So we have a large screen time. This is a global thing because there's 18 countries that have more screen time on average than we do.
It's a constant battle between immediate pleasure and self-control, making us pretty exhausted.
They're over-reliant on that stimulation, even in avenues where they shouldn't have it, like being outside in a park.
Most of the time it's easy just to give a kid a phone and let them go away, and it's kind of like, okay, they're out of my hair, but we as parents need to take a more proactive role in, like I said, managing what they have access to.
Especially in terms of the actual content, there's definitely more educational content towards it.
I think that there's a call for that. I think parents are feeling guilty, so at least if they're gonna have their kid watch their tablet, then at least let's make it worthwhile, or try to be worthwhile. I mean, there are plenty of things that our kids watch where they say, oh, I learned that on TV.
We actually had shows like Sesame Street, who actually taught us, the alphabet and how to count, and there were actually lessons in their shows.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighborhood.
Mr. Rogers, he taught great values. He actually broke certain racial taboos in it. He taught children that it's okay to be different, and everybody's worthy of being your neighbor. Everybody is your neighbor. I think it's a very Christian theme to work into this stuff. And I don't know that that's still the case.
As our children were growing up, we allowed them to watch shows such as Caillou, which was a little boy, and each episode had a lesson that came out of it.
There was a little bit more interaction involved, to ask questions and kind of pause in the middle of it and give you a chance to kind of think. And a lot of times our kids would respond out loud, wait for the answer to come up on the TV. So again, they tried to make it a little bit more interactive.
Having unrestricted access to the media is really dangerous because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and children don't have the ability to really understand if it's real or fake, right? So what happens is they consume the media and they take that as the truth, and then when it comes into their real life and that's not the case, they're confused, and then sometimes they get confrontational. My son sometimes does that. He'll watch something and they'll say this is what's real, this is what's happening, but it isn't. So when I try to correct, or my wife tries to correct, there's some internal conflict going on, and they don't understand why that's not the case.
I think the dangers in unmoderated screen time is really the dangers of the internet. So like predators for kids or content that might not be appropriate or real.
Dr. John Hutton is at the forefront of this fast-developing field, and he's published several studies that already suggest higher levels of screen time can impact a child's growth. One result that keeps showing up, parts of the brain related to reading, language, and decision-making are often weaker in kids who have more screen time. So what are parents and caregivers to do? These experts say try not to introduce any screen time before age 3.
There's so many things we make kids wait to do in our society. We make them wait to drink beer, we make them wait to vote, we make them wait to have a gun. But for some reason, we're not doing the same thing with these very powerful devices that give access to all the contents related to all those things.
As an occupational therapist, I've noticed that kids' hands muscles aren't as well developed as they used to be. It takes a lot of pushing Play-Doh and putting together Legos and coloring and actually physical things to develop the hand muscles. And when you're on an iPad or a phone, all you do is use your finger to swipe. So you don't use all those muscles.
I mean, if we go into the physiological aspect, it's really damaging on your eyes. So back in the day when you watched TV, you were usually 5, 10, 15 feet back from a TV, versus now it's right here. If you watch an iPad or a phone, it might be in high resolution, but you're watching it within sometimes 6 to 12 inches from your face, so it's really damaging on your eyes.
I do remember at one point in time my son was spending too much time playing video games and his grades dropped. We took away his I think it was a PlayStation. We took that away until he got his grades back up, which he did, and then he got his PlayStation back.
You know, if they're homesick, we let them watch TV. We're trying to get them to sit still and rest their bodies. I've seen occasionally, if they've watched 2 movies, that might just be too much and they really need to go and do something. But it's kind of hard because they're sick, so you're trying to balance, like, how do I get them to stay still and try to rest when they are crazy humans?
You will see more screen time tends to lead to worse behavior. You go to the store, you go to a mall, and you see kids constantly on a screen, right? What happens when the parent takes that away? They typically start screaming and having a meltdown, right? So it definitely has a negative impact on the way kids behave.
When I was growing up, we were made to go outside and play. I remember making mud pies and climbing trees and even getting clay out of the creek to make things. I think it was really good that we were in the real world doing real things, exploring. Creativity and their imagination comes alive when they are playing in real world situations, like playing outside with sticks and mud and trees, when they have to come up with their own storylines. I think that's very good for them and their imagination.
Overuse of technology nowadays is keeping the kids away from the things that we enjoyed as children. It's keeping them more indoors and keeping them from being outside playing, and it's keeping them from talking directly to one another. Now they prefer to text rather than talk to each other.
A lot of times as we grew up, we played, like I said, sports and did things outside, and we got our energy out through those activities, riding bicycles, even when the skateboard came along. There's a lot of things that we did outside to get our energy out.
And that's not the way it's done now. Everybody has their own screen or screens. Everybody's in their own room watching stuff. It's harder to monitor, particularly if you aren't all that tech savvy and can't put the parental controls on, or your kid figures out how to get around the parental controls and all that kind of stuff. And we're not there to say, well, that wasn't very good, that wasn't very nice, maybe we shouldn't be watching that.
I've said it many a time with my kids, you have to watch what you take in because it's what comes out a lot of times.
They're watching whatever they're watching. They're interacting with whatever they're interacting with, and nobody knows because we're all isolated. We're all off on our own, doing our own thing. I used to, in class, I'd ask my students, I'd say, how many TV screens do you have in your house? Because again, growing up, there was one TV screen in my house, right? And then I say, well, that's not even the question. It's how many screens, how many pads, how many computers, how many TVs, how many cell phones are in your house. And of course, the numbers are insane. It's really fragmenting society in a way. When you had 3 networks to choose from, you had things like the Beatles coming to the United States in 1964, and everybody saw it. When JFK was assassinated and they had the funeral a few days later, it was on all 3 networks. Everybody saw it. The only thing that even comes close to bringing us all together as a group to have this shared experience now, I don't know, the Super Bowl, that's pretty much it, because there's literally thousands of things to watch on any given day.
The danger is the more screen time you have, the less developed the social skills.
The type of entertainment children should consume should be story-centered. So rather than like TikTok shorts or Instagram reels or YouTube shorts, that's the type of media that's very dangerous for children. It's like a drug addiction. It's short, they get stimulated for a short period of time, but then they need the next one and then the next one. So the best approach would be to have them watch something that goes between 10, 15, 20 minutes long, sort of like what it was back in the 90s and early 2000s.
I have a kindergartner. I noticed, a lot of the shows that she would be exposed to are very short. What is fed to us as appropriate is usually like 7 minutes or less.
According to research, if they cut less, it's better. Like CoComelon, those kinds of shows cut a ton, and that's not good for them. It's supposed to be over stimulating for their brain. So Bluey actually does not cut nearly as fast as a lot of other shows. So that's one of the shows that we, consider fine for them to watch.
Ring, ring! As the technology has advanced and more people are spending more and more time obsessing over their smartphones and doom scrolling and whatever, that the interpersonal skills and the communication skills have gotten less well developed.
Turns out our brains are wired to keep watching. Binging activates the reward center found in the midbrain, where dopamine is released and sent to our nucleus accumbens in the basal ganglia. It taps into the more survival and pleasure-based centers of the brain, driving us to watch that next episode or just one more video from a creator we love on YouTube.
Children really just stare at the media, their mouth is agape, they're not really engaging. So in order to capture their attention, right, so YouTube can keep giving that ad revenue, they have to do things that grab their attention. Loud bangs, flashing lights, shouting at the screen, those types of things are negative because that's conditioning children to need those responses in order to engage in the material. They keep raising the ante, right? So what I fear is in the next 10 years, it's just gonna be shouting matches and loud disco lights constantly, because that would be what's needed in order to retain their attention, even in short form media.
In OT, sometimes we do use screens to help children learn to form letters correctly when they're writing. There's a lot of programs that help them. They can use their finger to learn the correct strokes, and I've used those before. A really good program that I liked using with my children and also with some of the kids I saw was Starfall, because it is a wonderful way to help kids learn their letters and their sounds and how to put them together and how even to read. I remember a mom friend of mine said that her daughter taught herself how to read by using Starfall. I thought that was amazing.
I totally see that screen time can be a way to give parents a minute to do something else, even if it is not educational or like applicable to real life, if it's just entertaining, and that can be helpful.
What would be positive is that there's more outlets for children to have a way to communicate with others.
We have at our disposal the sum total of human knowledge for the first time ever. It's basically right here. You can Google it, you can look it up, you have access to it. But, we're probably watching cat videos or something.
The content that I like in the kids' shows today help with things like exposing the ideas of potty training or trying different kinds of foods. So like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood is a show that goes through some of those topics. Anything that also has like a real life application that is palatable to kids has been helpful.
It's a two-edged sword. There are good things about it, but there are also definitely bad things about it. People are seeing that it's addictive and that it has harmful side effects, and yet they're not able to limit their time on it. We're truly addicted to this stuff. You can't completely divorce them from it. They can't be completely out of their lives, but you got to find a way to make sure they're being sensible about it.
We need to know everything they're watching. I think we have the right to take it away if it's not what what we feel is appropriate for them. The more you can limit for as long as you can, the better it is.
In our house, the methods that we use to kind of moderate screen time is just the exposure to screens. So we don't have a TV in the area where we hang out. We have a television, but it's not in a place where the kids are, which is just helpful. It's not even really an option. We have tablets, but we only use them when we travel, so they don't use them inside at all. They stay in the car. My husband and I try to not use our phones very much when we're around the kids. That's hard just because of the nature of our work. But we try to emphasize when we are using them for work and not for entertainment.
So we have a rule in our house where they're not allowed to watch movies on the weekdays. They can watch TV shows, but not movies. And that is really because I feel like a lot of TV shows are made with some sort of educational value in mind, but movies are really meant to entertain. And so for me, that distinction seems probably a little bit silly, but it was a way for me to say, okay, no, this is how you can use screen time and try to regulate what's on the screen. So they know that they're only their tablets are set to specific, only G-rated things or stuff like that, but also just, watching Disney movies all day is still not teaching them a whole lot.
It can very easily be necessary at times to take devices, whether they're video games or iPads or computer access, or more and more we're talking about people's phones. They're so attached now to their phones. Taking them away is a very legitimate way of motivating and getting the right behavior that you want from your child.
The parents need to be in total control of what their children are watching and doing, and make sure that they're safe when they're on the phone. Or there's so many shows that are so violent these days that I feel like they need to know what their children are watching.
I see it as maximizing safety. So when my kids play outside, I want them to run around, but if there's a road, I don't think they understand that if a car hits them, they die. So it's kind of the same thing with the internet. I want them to have access to explore and learn, but if it's at the expense of them getting kidnapped at the 7-Eleven when somebody offers to give them a Slurpee, I don't want that either. As their parent, I'm gonna know what's best, and that if they don't like it, that could damage our relationship, but I'm keeping them safe, and someday they'll understand why that is.
As with many things, the key is moderation. Limiting daily screen time and making sure the child can function in all of modern life, not only with screens, but in the real world too.